It's 20 Max for 2020. I'm Jason Snell here with Stephen Hackett and his very good friend slash headrest, the Power Mac G4 Cube.
This was the first Mac in my collection. This was gifted to me by a family friend years, like 10 or 11 years ago, and it set me down this path that has led to this very video.
The Power Mac G4 Cube is, again, as we've said in this series before, a fascinating failure that has a lot of really great stuff in it, and you understand why they did it. Also, I would say harkens back to the 20th anniversary Mac a little bit in that it's an Apple CEO kind of willing a product into existence that maybe shouldn't have been brought into existence. Because the G4 Cube, it lasted a year, and then they killed it, which is great. They finally convinced Steve Jobs that they needed to get rid of this thing. But it had lots of technical problems because it ran hot. It was so compact. It's such a great design. It's such a great idea. And then in practice, it wasn't that great. It was underpowered. It was expensive. It ran hot. It broke. It had a touch-sensitive port on the top that you could touch by accident or sometimes would just go off for no reason. It's not good.
Yeah, so you talked about the design. The idea of this was the Power Mac G4, that big case, that size machine, but shrunk down to an 8-inch cube. And how it worked is that you flipped it over.
Here we go. Here it is. My favorite part.
And you have all of the guts of the computer in here.
Yeah.
And if you look at this and you look in here, there's no fan. This was cooled by magic and wishes. And like you said, it had some issues with overheating.
Stephen, do you believe the G4 Cube can be cool? I believe.
I believe it won't melt on your desk when you open Photoshop. This computer really makes me think about the Trash Can Mac Pro. They're actually pretty similar in size, but if you look at this design, everything's so compact. They never really upgraded this. There's a couple different speeds of CPU, but this never really got a full revision. And my guess is they couldn't quite make it work. And for a long time, there were a bunch of people who modified these after they were discontinued. And usually the first thing people did was put a fan in it. So you can put faster and hotter components in here. But it really is a feat of engineering, but it's probably a feat of engineering that should have never left the lab, to be honest.
Yeah, and that there's a recurring theme here is the stuff that was maybe a little too early. Like, I think you could draw a line from this to something like the Mac Mini, which was also a dense computer product, but a little less ambitious and less beautiful.
Had a fan.
And had a fan, right? Like, you can draw a line and say the lessons learned here went somewhere else. I keep coming back to, like, but what if it worked, right? Because it's so amazing looking and it's so interesting. And what if it worked? And I know people who used them loved them, again, other than the fact that they could be unreliable. But I love the vision of it. I love the idea that this thing could have been just so iconic. And instead, it really is one of those footnotes in that era where it's so easy to erase history and say, Steve Jobs came back and it was a march to victory and every idea he had was good and every product that Apple released was great. And you miss a lot of these products from the early 2000s that weren't great, that they were trying lots of stuff and it didn't all work and they had to take their lumps and learn their lesson. And the G4 Cube, beautiful design-wise, but a failure as a product, and they had to move on, and they did.
This is also a Mac that was very notable that Apple wanted to sell it as a whole system, and so they had some Apple Cinema displays that had this clear acrylic, and all the press photos included that in it. Keyboard and mouse matched. This is very much a product of its time, design-wise. Even around the ports, there's like graphite, plastic. It is sort of Steve Jobs and Johnny Ive unchecked. And while it is beautiful, it wasn't a great computer. And ultimately, like you said, someone talked them into killing it just a year later without any major revision, and it sort of just slipped away into history.
Yeah, slipped away with a press release, which is unusual for Apple. They announced that they were putting the Cube on ice. It's actually said that.
On ice. What does that mean, on ice?
It's like an ice cube. And it melts away slowly and you don't notice. And they also said in that press release, it might come back someday, which I feel like was somebody like patting Steve Jobs on the back and saying, it's okay, Steve, it's okay. It might come back someday.
Hey, You heard it here first. The first Apple Silicon Mac is going to use a form factor like this.
All right, and they can call it the G6 Cube because G6 is taken or not taken. There's no G6s. They never made a G6. It's just. All right, well.
I don't think that's going to happen.
No, I don't think so. All right, well, the G4 Cube, you were a failure, but a beautiful failure, and we salute you for that. This is 20 Macs for 2020. We'll be back next week with a computer that might be a little less of a failure. Or not.
We'll find out.
Who knows?
Got to put this back together here. I don't want anybody stealing the parts out of my cube.
It's so satisfying.
It really is.